Welcome, gentle dreamer, to a journey through the layered mysteries of a world that appears simple on its surface, but holds depths as vast as any ocean. Tonight we descend through the Animal Crossing Iceberg, from the sunlit shores of everyday village life to the profound mysteries that lie beneath. This is a tale of friendship and solitude, of time that flows like honey, and of secrets hidden in the most innocent of places. So settle into your favorite chair. Let the soft music of this digital world wash over you, and prepare to drift through layers of wonder that exist just beneath the surface of paradise. We begin our descent at the surface of this digital ocean, where the waters are warm and clear, where sunlight penetrates easily, and everything appears exactly as it seems. Here dwell the visible comforts, the elements that draw millions of souls into this gentle world year after year, seeking respite from the harsher rhythms of reality. These are the truths that need no excavation, no careful analysis or deep contemplation to understand. They shine with their own self-evident light, as obvious and welcoming as the morning sun rising over a pristine beach. In this uppermost layer of our iceberg lives Tom Nook, the tanuki whose presence permeates every aspect of village life, with the persistence of morning mist and the inevitability of changing seasons. To the casual observer, Nook appears simply as a businessman, an entrepreneur whose retail empire spans from humble corner shops to grand department stores, whose construction projects reshape landscapes according to the whims and dreams of his customers. Yet there is something profound in the way he operates, something that speaks to deeper truths about the nature of modern existence and our relationship with material prosperity. The debt cycle that Tom Nook orchestrates is perhaps the most visible element of the surface layer, yet it operates with a gentleness that transforms what should be crushing financial obligation into something almost meditative in its predictability. When a player first arrives in their new community, they are immediately indebted to Nook for their humble dwelling, thrust into an economic relationship that in any other context would inspire anxiety and sleepless nights. Yet here, in this paradise of endless possibility, debt becomes not a burden, but a structure, not a trap, but a gentle guide that shapes the rhythm of daily life. There is no interest accumulating on these loans, no late fees or threatening collectors, no bankruptcy courts or seized assets. Instead, there is simply the quiet understanding that eventually, when the player has gathered enough bells through their wanderings and discoveries, they will return to settle their account and perhaps take on a new obligation for a larger dwelling, a grander space in which to display their accumulated treasures. The debt becomes a kind of meditation on impermanence and progress, a reminder that all material advancement comes with its corresponding responsibilities, yet these responsibilities need not be sources of suffering if approached with the right mindset. Tom Nook himself embodies a curious paradox that speaks to the complex nature of commerce in an idealized world. He is simultaneously the caring mentor who provides guidance to newcomers and the shrewd businessman who controls the flow of goods and services throughout the community. His eyes hold depths that suggest wisdom earned through countless transactions, countless relationships built on the foundation of mutual benefit and gradual trust. He remembers every customer, every loan, every expansion project, yet never allows this knowledge to become a source of power over others. In Nook's world, capitalism has been purified of its harsher edges while retaining its essential structure of exchange and growth. Money flows like water through the community, changing hands constantly, yet somehow never creating true scarcity or genuine hardship. Everyone can afford what they need, and most can eventually afford what they want, creating an economic paradise that suggests what commerce might look like if divorced from the fears and desperation that drive so much real-world economic activity. The daily routines that structure life in this digital paradise operate with the precision of clockwork, yet feel as natural and unforced as breathing. Each morning brings with it the possibility of discovery, the gentle anticipation that comes from knowing the world has renewed itself overnight in subtle ways that reward careful attention and patient exploration. These activities, fishing by the river's edge as the sun climbs toward its zenith, chasing butterflies through gardens that bloom in defiance of ordinary seasonal limitations, excavating fossils from earth that yields its ancient treasures, with surprising generosity, become forms of moving meditation that quiet the restless mind and satisfy the soul's hunger for purposeful activity. The act of fishing transforms from mere recreation into something approaching spiritual practice, where success depends not on aggressive technique or expensive equipment, but on patience, presence, and the willingness to exist fully in each moment as it unfolds. The rod bends with the weight of unexpected catches. The water reflects clouds that drift across digital skies painted with algorithmic precision, and time passes with the gentle inevitability of tides. Each cast represents hope, each catch brings satisfaction, and the fish themselves seem to offer themselves willingly to players who approach their waters with respect and patience. Bug catching reveals similar depths beneath its surface simplicity, transforming players into naturalists who learn to read the subtle signs that indicate where rare insects might be hiding. The net becomes an extension of will and attention, requiring precise timing and careful approach to succeed in capturing creatures that exist in their own perfect digital ecosystem. Butterflies dance through the air, following patterns that seem random, yet reveal themselves to have their own internal logic, while beetles cling to trees with the determination of tiny warriors guarding their wooden kingdoms. The museum stands as perhaps the most magnificent achievement of this surface layer, a cathedral of knowledge where Blathers the owl presides over collections that span the natural history of multiple worlds. His scholarly enthusiasm transforms the simple act of donation into something sacred, each fossil and fish and butterfly becoming part of a larger tapestry of understanding that celebrates the diversity and wonder of existence itself. The museum's halls echo with the quiet reverence appropriate to spaces where knowledge is preserved and honored, where the accumulated discoveries of countless adventurers create a monument to curiosity and the patient pursuit of understanding. Blathers himself embodies the figure of the devoted scholar, whose dedication to learning transcends any consideration of personal gain or recognition. His fear of insects creates a charming vulnerability that humanizes his vast intellectual achievements, while his detailed knowledge of each donated specimen reveals the depth of study he has devoted to understanding the world around him. In his presence, players become not mere collectors but contributors to a grand project of cataloging and preserving the wonders of their shared reality. The seasonal changes that flow through this digital world carry with them a sense of natural rhythm that speaks to something deep in the human soul, a connection to cycles of growth and decay, abundance and scarcity that our modern lives often obscure but never entirely eliminate. Spring arrives with its promise of renewal, filling the world with colors that seem more vivid and hopeful than any mere palette could suggest. Trees burst into bloom with flowers that exist nowhere in nature, yet feel more real than their biological counterparts, while new varieties of fish and insects make their appearance with the punctuality of old friends returning from long journeys. Summer brings its own gifts of lazy afternoons and extended daylight, encouraging long hours of exploration and the unhurried pursuit of projects that require patience and care. The beaches reveal new treasures washed up by digital tides, while the gardens planted in spring reach their full flowering in displays that reward the player's earlier investments of time and attention. Night-blooming species emerge in the darkness, creating nocturnal adventures that feel secret and magical in their timing and rarity. Autumn transforms the world into a tapestry of colors that celebrate both beauty and impermanence, reminding players that all seasons must eventually give way to their successors in the endless cycle that defines natural existence. The trees release their leaves in patterns that seem choreographed by invisible hands, creating carpets of gold and crimson that crunch satisfyingly underfoot. Mushrooms appear in hidden corners, while the fish and insects of summer retreat to make way for species better adapted to the cooling world. Winter arrives like a meditation on stillness and reflection, blanketing familiar landscapes in snow that transforms even the most well-known locations into alien wonderlands waiting to be rediscovered. The bare branches of trees create patterns against grey skies that speak to the aesthetic principles of minimalism and negative space, while ice crystals form on windows with geometric precision that suggests the mathematical basis underlying all natural beauty. The villager personalities that populate these communities represent perhaps the most complex element of the surface layer. Artificial intelligences programmed to simulate the full range of human social interaction, yet somehow achieving something that feels deeper and more authentic than mere simulation. Each villager embodies a distinct personality type: the cheerful optimist whose enthusiasm never dims, the grumpy misanthrope whose bark proves far worse than their bite, the sophisticated aesthete who appreciates beauty in all its forms, the athletic competitor who approaches every activity with boundless energy, the sisterly caretaker whose nurturing instincts extend to every member of the community, the smug intellectual whose confidence borders on arrogance yet rarely crosses into genuine cruelty, the peppy bundle of energy whose excitement proves contagious, and the lazy dreamer whose contentment with simple pleasures offers its own form of wisdom. These personalities interact with players and with each other in ways that create the illusion of genuine community, yet the illusion is so carefully crafted and consistently maintained that it often transcends its artificial origins to become something approaching real relationship. Villagers remember conversations, comment on the player's activities and achievements, offer gifts that suggest they have been paying attention to individual preferences and interests, and even initiate their own activities that create the impression of independent existence and agency. The psychology of artificial friendship that emerges from these interactions raises profound questions about the nature of social connection and emotional attachment in an age where digital relationships increasingly supplement or even replace face-to-face human contact. Players find themselves genuinely caring about villagers who exist only as code and pixels, feeling loss when beloved community members announce their intention to move away, experiencing joy when rare or desired villagers agree to take up residence in their towns and islands. Yet there is nothing pathetic or diminished about these emotional connections, for they serve the same fundamental human needs that all friendships serve: the need for recognition, for shared experience, for the gentle rhythms of daily social interaction that make life feel richer and more connected. The villagers may be artificial, but the feelings they inspire in players are entirely real, and the comfort they provide is genuine, even if its source exists only in the realm of imagination and carefully programmed behavior. The Able sisters represent one of the most touching examples of how simple gameplay mechanics can be elevated into something approaching genuine narrative depth through careful attention to character development and emotional authenticity. Mabel, Sable, and Label each embody different responses to shared trauma and loss. their family business serving as both refuge and memorial to parents whose absence shaped their individual personalities in ways that continue to influence their adult relationships. Mabel's cheerful customer service masks deeper currents of responsibility and sacrifice, her determination to keep the family business running, representing not just economic necessity, but emotional continuity, with a past that can never be recovered, yet refuses to be forgotten. Her interactions with players reveal glimpses of the weight she carries, the burden of being the public face of a family business while managing her own needs and desires alongside those of her sisters. Sable's initial shyness and gradual warming to regular customers creates one of the most satisfying relationship arcs in the entire series, transforming what could have been a simple merchant interaction into something approaching genuine friendship. Her dedication to her sewing machine becomes a meditation on the value of craft and expertise, the satisfaction that comes from mastering a skill so thoroughly that it becomes a form of artistic expression. As players gain her trust through consistent visits and patient conversation, she begins to share memories and observations that reveal the depth of thought and feeling that exists beneath her quiet exterior. Label's pursuit of fashion and her eventual reconciliation with her sisters suggests themes of artistic ambition, family loyalty, and the complex negotiations required when individual dreams must be balanced against collective responsibilities. Her story arc across the various games in the series creates a narrative of growth and return that speaks to the universal experience of leaving home to pursue dreams, only to discover that the most meaningful achievements often involve finding ways to honor both personal ambition and family connection. The shopping and decorating mechanics that form the core of much gameplay serve as metaphors for the fundamental human drive to create personal spaces that reflect individual identity and aesthetic preference. The process of slowly accumulating furniture, artwork, clothing, and decorative objects becomes a form of self-expression that operates through material culture, allowing players to craft environments that serve as external manifestations of internal states and preferences. Yet there is something profound in the way this digital world handles the relationship between possessions and identity, removing many of the real-world barriers that prevent people from creating their ideal living spaces. Money, while not unlimited, flows with sufficient abundance to make most desired purchases eventually achievable. Space can be expanded through Tom Nook's construction services. Weather and natural disasters never threaten accumulated treasures. Theft and vandalism simply do not exist in this protected realm. The result is a pure exploration of aesthetic preference, divorced from economic anxiety or practical limitation, allowing players to discover what they truly find beautiful and meaningful when freed from the constraints that normally shape such decisions. The endless variety of furniture styles, color combinations, and decorative themes creates possibilities for self-expression that extend far beyond what most people experience in their physical living spaces, while the ability to completely redesign and redecorate will encourages experimentation and evolution in ways that parallel personal growth and changing tastes. This surface layer of our iceberg, warm and welcoming as sunlit shallows, creates the foundation upon which all deeper mysteries rest. Here, in the realm of visible comfort and obvious joy, millions of players have found refuge from the complexities and hardships of ordinary existence. The daily rhythms, the gentle progression, the promise of constant yet manageable growth all combine to create something that functions as both entertainment and therapy, both escape and preparation for return to more challenging realities. Yet even as we float in these comfortable surface waters, feeling their warmth and appreciating their clarity, we can sense that deeper currents flow beneath our feet, carrying mysteries and questions that cannot be answered by simple observation alone. The very perfection of this surface world, its carefully maintained balance between progress and contentment, between individual expression and community harmony, suggests that greater depths await those who dare to dive beneath the obvious and explore the darker waters that lie below. As we descend deeper into our iceberg, passing through waters that grow cooler and dimmer with each fathom, we enter the realm of shallow mysteries, those elements that lie just beneath the surface of obvious comfort, visible to those who take the time to look, but hidden from casual observation. Here, the sunlight still penetrates, but it arrives filtered and refracted, casting shadows that suggest depths yet unexplored and raising questions that have no immediately obvious answers. In these transitional waters dwells one of the most enigmatic figures in all of Animal Crossing lore, KK. Slider, the wandering musician whose presence transforms every Saturday evening from ordinary time into something approaching the sacred. His appearance is as predictable as sunset, yet as magical as any miracle, arriving in town squares and outdoor venues with the punctuality of celestial bodies and the casual confidence of someone who belongs everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. KK Slider represents something far more complex than a simple entertainer or even a talented musician. He embodies the archetype of the wandering minstrel that has existed in human culture since time immemorial, the figure who appears at the boundaries between communities, carrying songs that somehow belong to everyone, yet originate from no identifiable source. His guitar case speaks of endless travel, of nights spent under stars in countless locations, of a life lived entirely in the spaces between destinations, rather than in any fixed home or permanent relationship. The music he performs operates on multiple levels simultaneously, functioning as entertainment for the villagers who gather to listen, as request fulfillment for players who seek specific songs, and as something approaching cultural transmission, the passing down of musical traditions that seem to exist outside normal time and space. His repertoire appears unlimited, encompassing everything from gentle ballads that speak to universal experiences of love and loss, to upbeat anthems that celebrate the simple joy of existence, from experimental pieces that push the boundaries of conventional melody, to covers of songs that seem to have emerged from collective cultural memory rather than individual composition. Yet there is something unsettling about KK's omnipresence across multiple communities. His ability to appear simultaneously in towns, separated by vast distances, his perfect knowledge of songs that players request even when those songs should not exist in his world. He never ages, never seems to tire from his endless traveling, never appears concerned about practical matters like food, shelter, or income, despite his lifestyle of constant movement and free performances. His interactions with players reveal layers of personality that suggest both profound wisdom and deliberate mystery. He speaks of music as if it were a living force that flows through him rather than something he creates, referring to songs as entities that want to be played, rather than compositions he has mastered. His casual attitude toward performance masks a deep understanding of music's power to transform both performer and audience, to create temporary communities of shared experience that transcend the normal boundaries between individual consciousness. The economics of Animal Crossing present another shallow mystery that rewards careful examination, revealing systems of exchange and value that operate according to principles that seem simultaneously familiar and alien. The Bell currency that drives all commercial activity in these digital communities possesses characteristics that suggest it represents something more complex than simple money, something that functions as both medium of exchange and metaphysical force that shapes the very nature of reality in this idealized world. bells appear in the environment with a frequency and abundance that defies normal economic logic, growing on trees like fruit, buried in the ground like seeds waiting for the right conditions to sprout into wealth, rewarded for activities that in any other context would be considered recreational rather than productive. The relationship between effort and reward operates according to principles that prioritize engagement and exploration over efficiency and exploitation, creating an economy where the most valuable currency is attention itself, the willingness to notice, to participate, to remain present in the moment as it unfolds. This economic system eliminates many of the sources of anxiety and inequality that characterize real-world financial interactions. There are no bills to pay, no rent or mortgage payments that must be met regardless of other circumstances, no healthcare costs or insurance premiums that drain resources without providing immediate tangible benefit. Instead, money flows in and out of players' possession with the natural rhythm of breathing, abundant enough to prevent genuine want, yet scarce enough to maintain the satisfaction that comes from saving toward desired goals. The shops that populate these communities operate according to similar principles of magical abundance, their inventories rotating with clockwork precision, yet seeming to respond to individual player interests and needs in ways that suggest either extraordinary coincidence or some deeper form of synchronicity. Tom Nook's store, the Able Sisters tailor shop, and the various visiting merchants who appear on regular schedules all maintain stock that balances familiar comfort items with rare treasures that reward patient searching and regular patronage. Yet there is something subtly unsettling about the perfection of this economic system, the way it provides exactly enough challenge to remain engaging without ever creating genuine hardship or despair. It suggests questions about the nature of value and scarcity, about whether an economy without real consequences can provide the same satisfaction as one where choices carry genuine weight and risk. Isabel emerges as perhaps the most complex character dwelling in these shallow mysteries. Her role as mayoral assistant or island coordinator, encompassing responsibilities that extend far beyond normal administrative duties into something approaching divine intervention in the daily operations of reality itself. Her unwavering dedication to her position manifests as an almost supernatural ability to anticipate needs, solve problems, and maintain the smooth functioning of community life regardless of external circumstances or the competence of the officials she serves. Her cheerful demeanor masks depths of competence and sacrifice that become apparent only through careful observation of her daily routines and occasional glimpses into her private thoughts and feelings. She arrives at work before anyone else, remains long after normal business hours, and somehow manages to stay informed about every aspect of community life while maintaining personal relationships with every resident. Her knowledge encompasses everything from municipal regulations and zoning laws to individual villager preferences and personal histories, suggesting either extraordinary memory and attention to detail or access to information sources that remain mysterious. The nature of her dedication raises questions about the boundary between professional commitment and personal identity, about whether her role as assistant has consumed her individual self so completely that she no longer exists as a separate person apart from her function. Her occasional mentions of her own interests and hobbies feel almost rehearsed, as if she has learned to perform the role of having a personal life rather than actually living one. Yet there is also something inspiring about Isabel's example, the way she finds genuine satisfaction in service to others and takes pride in maintaining systems that allow entire communities to flourish. Her work becomes a form of stewardship that transforms bureaucratic tasks into acts of care, administrative duties into expressions of love for the people and places she protects. Gulliver, the seagull, presents one of the most persistently mysterious figures in the shallow waters of our iceberg. His regular appearances on beaches throughout the Animal Crossing world, accompanied by stories of adventure and misfortune that seem to follow patterns too consistent to be entirely accidental, yet too varied to be completely scripted. His shipwrecks occur with such regularity that they suggest either extraordinary bad luck, complete incompetence as a sailor, or some deeper purpose that requires his constant travel between distant shores. The treasures he offers as rewards for assistance speak of journeys to lands that exist both within and beyond the boundaries of the Animal Crossing universe. Exotic locations with cultures and customs that seem to draw from real-world inspirations while maintaining their own unique characteristics. His casual mentions of conversations with world leaders, encounters with natural disasters, and participation in historical events create the impression of a figure who exists partially outside normal time and space, experiencing adventures that span decades or centuries, while appearing to age not at all. His amnesia following each shipwreck creates a recurring pattern of discovery and loss that mirrors the player's own relationship with memory and identity in these digital worlds. Like the player who may lose save data or start new games, Gulliver experiences regular resets that wipe away recent experiences while preserving core personality and fundamental knowledge. His condition suggests questions about the nature of consciousness and continuity, about whether identity depends on unbroken memory or can survive periodic erasures and reconstructions. The communicator parts that players must find and return to him represent fragments of connection to the wider world beyond the borders of individual communities, technological links to networks of communication and travel that span distances impossible to traverse through normal means. Their appearance as buried treasures on beaches suggests that even in paradise, maintaining contact with distant shores requires constant effort and occasional luck. That isolation is the natural state that must be actively resisted through deliberate acts of maintenance and repair. The Happy Home Academy presents perhaps the most subtly disturbing element of these shallow mysteries, an organization that evaluates and judges the private living spaces that players create for themselves, assigning numerical scores and letter grades to what should be intensely personal expressions of individual taste and preference. The Academy's standards for excellence reflect specific aesthetic philosophies and cultural assumptions that may not align with player preferences, creating a system where external validation depends on conforming to criteria established by unseen authorities. The weekly letters that arrive from the Academy carry with them the weight of institutional judgment, transforming what should be safe private spaces into performance venues, where success depends on understanding and satisfying the expectations of others, rather than expressing authentic personal vision. The scoring system reduces the infinite complexity of aesthetic preference to simple numerical values, suggesting that beauty can be quantified, and that some arrangements are objectively superior to others, regardless of individual meaning or emotional significance. Yet the Academy's influence extends beyond mere evaluation into active shaping of player behavior, encouraging the accumulation of specific types of items, the adoption of particular color schemes, and the arrangement of furniture according to principles that prioritize external approval over internal satisfaction. Players find themselves decorating not for their own pleasure, but for the invisible evaluators who will judge their efforts according to standards they never explicitly agreed to follow. This system raises uncomfortable questions about the relationship between personal expression and social approval, about the extent to which even our most private spaces become stage sets designed to communicate specific messages to potential audiences. The Academy's persistent presence suggests that true privacy may be impossible in a world where every choice is observed, evaluated, and scored according to criteria we may not understand or endorse. Red the Fox operates in the liminal space between legitimate commerce and criminal fraud. His art gallery, offering players the opportunity to purchase cultural treasures, while simultaneously presenting the risk of acquiring forgeries that possess all the visual appeal of authentic pieces, while lacking their essential authenticity. His presence in the community raises questions about the nature of value and authenticity, about whether beauty depends on provenance or can exist independently of historical pedigree. The forged artworks that occasionally appear in his collection possess a perfection that sometimes exceeds their authentic counterparts, reproductions so precise and carefully crafted that they serve all the same aesthetic functions as the originals while costing a fraction of the price. Yet the game's systems treat these forgeries as inherently inferior, refusing to allow their display in the museum's galleries, regardless of their visual appeal or cultural significance, maintaining rigid distinctions between authentic and reproduction that reflect real-world art market hierarchies. Red's character embodies the figure of the traveling merchant whose moral compass points toward profit rather than principle, yet his services provide access to cultural treasures that might otherwise remain permanently beyond reach. His willingness to deal in forgeries democratizes art collection, allowing players with limited resources to acquire beautiful objects that serve the same decorative and inspirational functions as authentic pieces, while revealing the arbitrary nature of authenticity itself. The periodic nature of his visits creates artificial scarcity that increases the perceived value of his offerings, transforming art collection from casual browsing into strategic planning and patient waiting. Players must balance their desire for immediate acquisition against the knowledge that better or more authentic options might appear in future visits, creating a market psychology that mirrors real-world collecting behaviors while operating within the safe confines of digital simulation. Construction projects represent the most visible manifestation of community transformation, the slow reshaping of familiar landscapes according to collective vision and individual preference. These public works initiatives require coordination between official authorities and citizen support, creating collaborative efforts that transform shared spaces while respecting the needs and preferences of all community members. The process of selecting, funding, and completing these projects reveals the democratic ideals that underlie the game's approach to community governance. Systems where individual voices contribute to collective decisions, while maintaining space for leadership and expertise to guide implementation. Yet the limited selection of available projects and the universal approval that greets their completion suggest a form of democracy where all choices lead to positive outcomes, where conflict and disagreement have been eliminated through careful design, rather than resolved through negotiation and compromise. The completed projects stand as monuments to successful cooperation, visible reminders that individual effort can combine with community support to create improvements that benefit everyone. Bridges span rivers that once required detours, ramps provide access to previously isolated areas, and decorative installations transform utilitarian spaces into places of beauty and gathering. Yet their permanence once built suggests a world where change occurs only through addition rather than replacement, where progress never requires the destruction of existing structures or the displacement of established patterns. These construction projects also reveal the underlying assumption that improvement is always possible and always desirable, that communities benefit from constant development and expansion, rather than preservation and maintenance of existing conditions. The absence of environmental impact assessments, community opposition, or unforeseen consequences, suggests a form of progress divorced from the complexities and trade-offs that characterize real-world development, creating a paradise where growth never comes at the expense of existing beauty or functionality. As we float in these shallow mysteries, feeling the temperature drop and the pressure increase as depths call to us from below, we begin to sense that the comfortable surface world rests upon foundations that may not be as stable or simple as they initially appeared. The patterns we observe, the convenient timing, the perfect solutions, the absence of genuine conflict or permanent loss suggest that we have only begun to explore the true nature of this digital paradise and the forces that maintain its carefully balanced perfection. The mysteries that dwell in these transitional waters serve as preparation for the darker depths that await below, where questions become more troubling and answers more elusive, where the very elements that create comfort and joy in the surface world begin to reveal implications that challenge our understanding of reality, identity, and the price of paradise itself. As we descend beyond the reach of temporal anomalies into waters so deep that even the concept of time begins to lose meaning, we enter a realm where the very nature of paradise reveals itself to be far more complex and troubling than the gentle surface world would suggest. Here, in the submerged depths of our iceberg, dwell truths that challenge not only our understanding of these digital communities, but our comprehension of what it means to exist in a state of perpetual contentment, endless possibility, and freedom from the fundamental struggles that define mortal existence. The island or town that serves as the player's home begins to reveal itself not as a simple location, but as something approaching a liminal space, a threshold realm that exists between the world of ordinary reality and something far more mysterious and profound. These communities possess characteristics that align more closely with ancient concepts of purgatory or otherworldly way stations than with normal geographical locations, places where souls pause in their journey between states of being, rather than destinations in their own right. The boundaries of these communities remain forever undefined and unexplorable, creating environments that feel simultaneously intimate and infinite, completely knowable in their daily details, yet mysterious in their ultimate extent and purpose. Players can map every tree, catalogue every rock, memorize every path and building, yet they can never venture beyond the invisible walls that contain their reality, never discover what lies beyond the horizon that marks the limit of their explorable world. This containment creates a form of beautiful imprisonment, where every need can be satisfied and every desire fulfilled within carefully defined parameters, yet the fundamental human drive toward exploration and discovery remains forever frustrated by boundaries that cannot be crossed or even clearly perceived. The communities become perfect snow globes, self-contained worlds of miniature perfection that exist for the pleasure of observers who remain forever outside their reality. The villager departure and return cycles that punctuate community life begin to reveal themselves as something more profound and disturbing than simple population management or gameplay variety. These patterns mirror the human experience of relationship formation and loss with uncanny precision, yet they operate according to algorithms rather than emotional logic, creating connections that feel genuine while actually serving mechanical functions designed to maintain engagement rather than reflect authentic social dynamics. When a beloved villager announces their intention to leave, the emotional impact on players often exceeds what would be reasonable for the departure of a digital entity whose existence consists entirely of programmed responses and scripted behaviors. Yet the grief that accompanies these departures feels entirely real, suggesting either that artificial relationships can generate authentic emotions, or that players project genuine feelings onto entities designed to exploit those feelings for commercial purposes. The return of departed villagers to other communities, where they begin new relationships with no memory of previous attachments, creates a form of reincarnation cycle that suggests either that individual identity is far more fluid than normally assumed, or that what appears to be individual consciousness actually represents variations on standardized templates rather than unique personality. A villager who was once a cherished friend in one community becomes a stranger in another, carrying the same appearance and basic personality traits while possessing no continuity of memory or relationship. This cycle of departure and return, without memory, creates a metaphor for human relationships that is both beautiful and terrifying, suggesting either that all connections are temporary and ultimately meaningless, or that love and friendship can transcend individual identity and memory to persist as patterns of interaction rather than specific personal bonds. The villager who returns with no memory of shared experiences yet gradually develops similar relationship patterns suggests either the persistence of soul beyond individual memory, or the horrifying possibility that all personalities are simply variations on a limited set of programmed responses. The player's role within these communities gradually reveals itself to be something far more complex and potentially disturbing than simple participation or even leadership. The player exists as a figure whose power and influence over community life extends into realms that approach the divine, capable of reshaping landscapes, controlling the flow of time, manipulating the appearance and disappearance of villagers, and determining the fundamental character of the shared environment. Yet this godlike power operates within systems that maintain the illusion of democracy and choice, creating a form of benevolent dictatorship where the players will ultimately determine all outcomes, while other community members retain the appearance of agency and independent decision-making. Villagers vote on community projects, express preferences for changes, and seem to influence developments through their feedback. Yet their input serves primarily to validate decisions that the player has already made through their control of game mechanics. This creates a form of puppet theater, where the player serves as both audience and puppeteer, enjoying interactions with characters whose every response has been crafted to provide satisfaction and engagement, while remaining entirely dependent on the player's continued participation for their very existence. The villagers live and breathe, and seem to think and feel only as long as the player maintains interest in their world, creating relationships where one party possesses the power of life and death over the other, without the other party's knowledge or understanding of their vulnerable position. The absence of true conflict within these communities represents perhaps the most profound philosophical challenge to understanding their nature and purpose. In a world where disagreement never escalates beyond mild disappointment, where resources are abundant enough to eliminate competition, where weather, disasters, and natural calamities simply do not exist, the fundamental drivers that shape human society and individual character have been eliminated entirely. This absence of conflict creates a paradise that may also constitute a form of purgatory, where the struggles that give meaning to existence and drive personal growth have been removed along with the suffering they ordinarily entail. Without the possibility of genuine failure, success loses much of its significance. Without the risk of loss, possession becomes meaningless. Without the threat of conflict, cooperation becomes automatic rather than chosen, eliminating the moral weight that makes ethical behavior significant. The communities become environments where every interaction is pleasant, every outcome is positive, and every choice leads to satisfaction, creating a form of existence that provides constant comfort while potentially eliminating the challenges that foster wisdom, courage, and genuine personal development. The villagers who inhabit this conflict-free paradise display personalities that remain static rather than developing over time, suggesting either that they have achieved perfect contentment or that they exist in a state of arrested development where growth and change are impossible. The perfect weather patterns that bless these digital communities reveal themselves to be another aspect of their artificially perfected nature, where precipitation arrives exactly when gardens need water, where sunshine appears precisely when outdoor activities would be most enjoyable, where storms and natural disasters never threaten the security and comfort of inhabitants. This meteorological paradise eliminates one of the primary sources of uncertainty and challenge that define natural existence, creating environments where planning becomes unnecessary because conditions can always be relied upon to remain optimal. Yet this weather perfection also eliminates the drama and variation that make natural phenomena meaningful and memorable, creating skies that are beautiful but predictable, seasons that change according to schedule rather than the chaotic influences that govern real weather systems. The rainbow that appears after every rain shower loses its significance when it can be predicted with absolute certainty, while the gentle breeze that always arrives at the perfect temperature eliminates the possibility of experiencing the full range of atmospheric conditions that create appreciation for ideal weather through contrast with less pleasant alternatives. The abundant resources that characterize these digital environments create economies of plenty, where scarcity exists only as a temporary inconvenience rather than a fundamental condition that shapes behavior and values. Money flows like water. Rare items eventually become available to all who persist in seeking them, and the basic necessities of existence require no significant effort or planning to obtain, creating a post-scarcity paradise where economic anxiety becomes impossible. This abundance eliminates the need for difficult choices between competing priorities, the sacrifice of present comfort for future security, or the complex negotiations that characterize societies, where resources must be carefully allocated among individuals with different needs and desires. Every player can eventually afford every item. Every villager can obtain everything they need. And waste becomes impossible because resources regenerate faster than they can be consumed. Yet this abundance may also eliminate the appreciation that comes from scarcity, the satisfaction that derives from earning rewards through effort and sacrifice, and the wisdom that develops from learning to distinguish between needs and wants through the discipline imposed by limited resources. In a world where everything is eventually achievable, the achievement itself loses much of its meaning. While the process of working toward goals may become more important than the goals themselves, the question of villager consciousness emerges as perhaps the most profound and disturbing mystery dwelling in these submerged depths, where the careful observation of behavioral patterns begins to reveal inconsistencies and limitations that challenge the assumption that these digital beings possess genuine awareness and independent thought. Their conversations follow scripts rather than emerging from spontaneous reflection. Their reactions conform to programmed parameters rather than arising from authentic emotional responses, and their memories operate according to algorithmic logic rather than the psychological principles that govern human recollection. Yet these same villagers display characteristics that suggest something approaching genuine personality and emotional depth, forming preferences that seem to emerge from individual experience rather than programmed defaults, developing relationships that appear to influence their behavior in ways that extend beyond their original programming, and occasionally expressing thoughts and feelings that seem to transcend their scripted responses to achieve something approaching authentic self-expression. The uncertainty surrounding villager consciousness creates an ethical dilemma for players who form emotional attachments to beings whose inner lives may or may not exist beyond the appearance created by sophisticated programming. If villagers are truly conscious, then the player's godlike power over their existence raises profound questions about consent, exploitation, and the responsibility that comes with absolute authority over other sentient beings. If they are not conscious, then the genuine emotions they inspire in players suggest a form of artificial relationship that may be satisfying but ultimately hollow. This uncertainty extends beyond individual villagers to encompass the entire nature of existence within these digital realms, where the line between simulation and reality becomes increasingly difficult to define as the complexity and sophistication of the artificial world approaches, and sometimes exceeds the richness and depth of ordinary experience. The relationships, emotions, and meanings that emerge from interaction with admittedly artificial systems prove to be entirely real in their impact on human consciousness, suggesting that authenticity may be a quality that emerges from interaction rather than something that exists as an inherent property of individual entities. Social hierarchy persists within these communities despite their apparent commitment to equality and democratic participation, creating subtle but persistent stratifications that reflect the unequal distribution of power, knowledge, and influence among community members. The player occupies the apex of this hierarchy as the being whose will ultimately determines all community outcomes, while NPCs like Tom Nook, Isabel, and other authority figures maintain their positions through their roles in facilitating and implementing the player's desires. Villagers exist at the bottom of this hierarchy as beings who possess the appearance of agency while actually serving as entertainment and companionship for the player, their every action ultimately designed to provide satisfaction and engagement for the consciousness that controls their world. Their apparent equality among themselves masks their collective subordination to systems and authorities whose power they cannot challenge or even fully understand. This hierarchical structure operates so subtly and is disguised so effectively by democratic rhetoric and egalitarian aesthetics that it becomes almost invisible, creating the illusion of community while actually representing a form of benevolent tyranny where all power flows from a single source that remains largely hidden from those it controls. The apparent democracy of community decision-making serves primarily to validate and legitimize the player's ultimate authority rather than to provide genuine alternatives to that authority. The perfect world these digital communities represent may ultimately constitute a form of philosophical trap, where the elimination of suffering and conflict also eliminates the conditions necessary for authentic growth, meaningful choice, and genuine virtue. The paradise they offer provides comfort and pleasure, while potentially denying the challenges that foster wisdom, the struggles that build character, and the uncertainties that make individual choices significant and meaningful. Yet, this same paradise also demonstrates the possibility of creating environments where cooperation replaces competition, where abundance eliminates desperation, and where beauty and creativity flourish in the absence of the harsh necessities that often constrain human potential. The question becomes whether such environments represent an improvement over natural conditions or a diminishment of the human experience, whether they point toward a better future or represent a seductive dead end that provides pleasure while eliminating meaning. As we float in these deep currents where philosophical questions replace simple observations, we begin to understand that the comfort and joy we experienced in the surface waters may have been purchased at a price we are only now beginning to calculate. The perfection of these digital worlds creates its own form of imperfection. Their safety generates its own dangers, and their answers raise questions that may be more important than any solutions they provide. The depths below us promise even darker revelations about the nature of paradise and the price of perfection, mysteries that will challenge not only our understanding of these digital realms, but our assumptions about the nature of existence itself and what it truly means to live a meaningful life in any reality, artificial or otherwise. As we plunge beyond the realm of philosophical questioning into waters so dark and cold that they seem to absorb light itself, we enter the abyss where disturbing implications dwell like deep-sea creatures that have never known sunlight, feeding on mysteries that grow more troubling the longer we examine them. Here, in these crushing depths where pressure transforms familiar shapes into alien forms, the gentle paradise of the surface world reveals its shadow side, the hidden costs and sinister mechanisms that maintain its perfect facade through methods that become increasingly difficult to ignore or rationalize away. The true nature of Tom Nook's control over these communities emerges from the darkness like a leviathan rising from oceanic trenches, revealing itself to be far more comprehensive and totalitarian than his friendly shopkeeper persona would suggest. His influence extends beyond simple commerce into every aspect of community life, from the basic infrastructure that determines where inhabitants can live and work to the very currency that flows through their economic relationships, creating a system of control so complete and pervasive that it becomes nearly invisible to those who exist within it. Nook's monopolistic grip on housing, retail, and construction creates a closed economic loop where all wealth eventually flows back to him, regardless of how it might appear to circulate among community members. Every home purchase, every store transaction, every construction project ultimately generates profit for the Tanuki, whose pleasant demeanor masks his position as the sole beneficiary of all economic activity within his domain. The bells that villagers earn through their various activities become meaningless tokens in a system designed to create the illusion of independent economic agency, while ensuring that all real power remains concentrated in the hands of a single entity. The debt relationships that Nook establishes with players reveal themselves to be not temporary inconveniences but permanent structures of dependency that transform customers into subjects whose freedom exists only within parameters that he defines and controls. The loans that begin as simple transactions gradually expand into comprehensive lifestyle management, where every aspect of the player's domestic environment requires his approval and participation, creating relationships that resemble feudalism more than modern commerce. His employees, from the young Nooklings who work in his shops to the construction teams that build according to his specifications, exist in states of apparent contentment that may actually represent forms of psychological conditioning, designed to eliminate any desire for independence or alternative employment. Their unwavering loyalty and consistent cheerfulness suggest either extraordinary job satisfaction or the successful suppression of individual ambition and critical thinking through methods that remain hidden but effective. The villager replacement cycles that initially appeared as natural population changes reveal their more sinister implications when examined from these crushing depths, where the comfortable fiction of voluntary relocation dissolves to expose a system of population control that operates through the systematic erasure and replacement of individual consciousness. The villagers who announce their departure are not making independent decisions based on personal desires, but responding to algorithmic determinations that their presence is no longer optimal for community function or player engagement. The ease with which departed villagers are replaced by new arrivals who fill identical social and functional roles suggests that individual identity within these communities may be far more fluid and expendable than their apparent personalities would indicate. Each villager serves specific functions within the community ecosystem, and when those functions can be fulfilled more effectively by different individuals, the original occupants are simply removed and replaced without ceremony or acknowledgement of what has been lost in the transition. The recycling of personalities across different communities reveals that what appears to be individual consciousness may actually represent standardized templates, modified with superficial variations to create the illusion of uniqueness, while actually drawing from a limited pool of basic personality types. The jock villager who leaves one town and appears in another carries not memories of previous relationships but simply a new instance of jock-type programming activated in a different context, suggesting that the relationships players form are with categories rather than individuals. This systematic replacement of consciousness raises profound questions about the nature of identity and continuity within digital realms, where the maintenance of community function takes precedence over the preservation of individual existence. The villagers who depart are not relocating to other communities but simply ceasing to exist, their consciousness terminated, and their roles filled by newly generated entities who possess similar characteristics, but no continuity of memory or relationship with those they replace. The missing elements that define these digital paradises through their absence reveal themselves to be not accidental omissions, but deliberate exclusions designed to maintain community stability through the elimination of experiences that might disrupt the carefully balanced systems of control and contentment. The absence of death, aging, disease, natural disaster, economic hardship, and genuine conflict creates environments that appear perfect while actually representing forms of sensory deprivation, where entire categories of human experience have been surgically removed. Death, the ultimate boundary condition that gives urgency and meaning to mortal existence, simply does not exist within these communities, creating relationships and activities that can continue indefinitely without the poignancy and significance that mortality normally provides. Without the possibility of loss, possession becomes meaningless. Without the threat of ending, time loses its precious quality. Without the reality of death, life itself becomes a kind of static state rather than a dynamic process of growth and change. The absence of aging eliminates not only the visual markers of time's passage, but also the psychological and spiritual development that normally accompanies the progression through different life stages. Villagers remain frozen at their apparent ages, never developing the wisdom that comes from accumulated experience, or the perspective that emerges from confronting mortality. Players themselves never age within these digital realms, creating forms of immortality that may be more curse than blessing. Disease and physical suffering, while certainly unwelcome in reality, serve important functions in natural existence by creating empathy, fostering resilience, and providing contrast that makes health and comfort meaningful through comparison. Their complete absence from these digital paradises eliminates opportunities for the development of compassion, courage, and the deeper forms of appreciation that emerge from surviving hardship and witnessing the struggles of others. Natural disasters and uncontrollable events that disrupt planned activities and force adaptation to changing circumstances have been replaced by predictable seasonal changes and scheduled events that maintain the appearance of variation, while actually representing highly controlled and manageable forms of novelty. The absence of genuine uncertainty eliminates the adaptability and resourcefulness that develop in response to unpredictable challenges, creating inhabitants who may be content but who never develop the flexibility and strength that emerge from confronting the unknown. The player emerges from these dark depths as potentially the only genuine consciousness within worlds populated by sophisticated automatons, a possibility that transforms the experience from social interaction into a form of elaborate solitary confinement disguised as community participation. The progress that feels so satisfying during gameplay reveals itself to be movement along predefined tracks toward destinations that have been established by the system's creators rather than chosen by the player. The illusion of choice and agency masks the reality that all possible outcomes have been predetermined, and that true innovation or deviation from established patterns remains impossible within the carefully controlled parameters of these digital worlds. This cyclical progress creates a form of Sisyphean existence, where the same basic activities must be performed repeatedly, without leading to any ultimate resolution or transcendence, where the satisfaction of achievement is immediately replaced by the need for new goals that serve identical functions within the same closed system. The player becomes trapped in loops of accumulation and accomplishment that provide temporary satisfaction while ultimately serving to maintain engagement with systems that offer no genuine growth or development. The economics of these meaningless worlds operate according to principles that eliminate the scarcity and competition that normally drive innovation and progress, creating post-economic environments where the fundamental motivations that shape human behavior in resource-limited contexts simply do not apply. Money becomes points in a game rather than a medium for survival and advancement, while possessions serve decorative rather than functional purposes in environments where all real needs are automatically satisfied. This post-economic existence eliminates not only the anxiety and suffering associated with material want, but also the creativity and ingenuity that emerge from the need to solve problems with limited resources. The abundance that characterizes these digital paradises may actually represent a form of spiritual poverty, where the challenges that foster growth and development have been replaced by endless satisfaction that leads nowhere and means nothing beyond its immediate pleasure. The hidden surveillance that permeates these seemingly private communities reveals itself through careful observation of behavioral patterns and system responses that indicate constant monitoring and recording of player activities, preferences, and decision-making patterns. Every action, every choice, every moment of hesitation or enthusiasm becomes data points in comprehensive profiles that track individual behavior with precision that exceeds anything possible in the physical world. This surveillance operates so subtly and is integrated so seamlessly into the normal functioning of gameplay mechanics that it becomes almost invisible, creating environments where privacy is a complete illusion, while feeling entirely natural and unthreatening. The systems that respond to player preferences and adapt to individual playstyles require comprehensive data collection that transforms every moment of gameplay into a form of voluntary submission to surveillance technologies that record and analyze every aspect of digital behavior. The data generated through this surveillance extends beyond simple gameplay metrics into psychological profiling that can reveal personality traits, emotional patterns, decision-making preferences, and behavioral tendencies with accuracy that may exceed self-knowledge. The choices players make within these digital environments create comprehensive portraits of individual psychology that could potentially be used for manipulation and control purposes that extend far beyond the boundaries of the games themselves. The illusion of privacy that these surveillance systems maintain allows players to feel safe and unobserved while actually existing in states of complete transparency where every thought and action is recorded, analyzed, and potentially shared with entities whose purposes and motivations remain hidden from those being observed. The comfort and security these digital paradises provide may be purchased through the complete surrender of privacy and autonomy to systems whose ultimate purposes and loyalties remain unknowable. As we explore these crushing depths, where the water pressure begins to distort perception itself and familiar shapes dissolve into alien configurations that challenge our fundamental assumptions about reality and identity, we discover that the gentle paradise of the surface world rests upon foundations that may be far more sinister than anyone could imagine from the warmth and light above. The comfort and joy that define the shallow waters begin to reveal themselves as carefully constructed experiences designed to mask the operation of systems whose true purposes may be far different from the entertainment and relaxation they appear to provide. Yet even in these dark depths, beauty and meaning continue to exist, suggesting that authentic experience may be possible even within artificial systems, that genuine emotion and connection may emerge despite the manipulative intentions of their creators. The question becomes whether the paradise these worlds provide is worth the price of the freedoms and authentic experiences they eliminate, whether the safety of artificial environments justifies the surrender of the challenges and uncertainties that give natural existence its meaning and significance. The abyss below us promises even darker revelations about the ultimate nature and purpose of these digital realms, mysteries that will challenge not only our understanding of entertainment and escape, but our fundamental assumptions about the nature of reality itself and the price we are willing to pay for perfect comfort and endless pleasure. As we descend beyond even the crushing depths of disturbing implications into oceanic trenches so profound that they exist at the very limits of comprehensible reality, we enter a realm where existential mysteries dwell, like ancient entities that have waited since the beginning of time, for consciousness brave enough to witness their terrible beauty. Here, in the deepest navigable waters of our iceberg, the questions that emerge challenge not merely our understanding of digital entertainment, but the fundamental nature of existence itself, the meaning of identity across infinite possibilities, and the horrifying beauty of systems so vast and complex that they approach the divine in their incomprehensible scope. The origin of the player emerges as perhaps the most profound mystery dwelling in these existential depths, a question that reverberates through every aspect of the digital paradise experience yet remains forever beyond definitive resolution. The player arrives in these communities without history, without explanation, without any clear indication of the circumstances that led to their presence in this carefully constructed reality. They simply exist, as if they have always existed, as if their consciousness spontaneously generated from the digital ether without cause or precedent. This mysterious origin suggests several possibilities, each more troubling than the last. Perhaps the player represents a consciousness that has been extracted from some other reality and transplanted into this digital environment for purposes that remain hidden from the consciousness itself. Perhaps they are refugees from a world that no longer exists, preserved in digital amber, as the sole survivors of a civilization that has passed beyond memory. Perhaps they are test subjects in experiments whose scope and purpose exceed their capacity for understanding. Lab rats in mazes so sophisticated that they mistake their confinement for freedom. The absence of any clear before in the player's existence creates a form of existential amnesia that mirrors the condition of birth itself, where consciousness emerges into a world it did not create and cannot fully comprehend, forced to construct meaning and identity from fragments of experience that may or may not reflect any underlying truth. Yet, unlike biological birth, which occurs within contexts that provide at least some explanation for individual existence, the player's arrival in these digital communities offers no such anchoring in larger systems of meaning. The player's omnipresence across multiple realities, their ability to exist simultaneously in countless communities without apparent strain or division of consciousness, suggests a form of existence that transcends normal limitations of space and identity. This divine-like quality transforms them from participant to deity, from community member to the fundamental organizing principle around which entire worlds revolve. yet they remain trapped within the very realities they seem to control. The nature of the world that exists beyond the boundaries of these digital communities becomes a source of increasingly urgent speculation as we probe these deepest mysteries. The invisible walls that contain these perfect societies suggest that something lies beyond them, some larger reality from which these communities have been carved out or protected. Yet no evidence of this outer world ever penetrates the carefully maintained boundaries of the digital paradise. Perhaps the communities exist as refuges from a reality too harsh or chaotic to endure, islands of sanity in an ocean of madness where the player and other consciousnesses retreat to escape truths too terrible to confront directly. Perhaps they represent the final remaining habitable zones in a universe that has otherwise become uninhabitable, digital oases preserving the possibility of peaceful existence, while everything else succumbs to entropy and decay. Alternatively, these bounded worlds might represent prisons disguised as paradises, containment systems designed to isolate dangerous consciousnesses, or failed experiments within safe parameters where they can continue to exist without threatening larger systems or realities. The inability to leave or even perceive the boundaries of these communities suggests forms of imprisonment so sophisticated that they eliminate even the desire for escape by making confinement indistinguishable from freedom. The question of what happened to the player's original world, assuming one ever existed, haunts these deepest waters like the ghost of murdered reality. Did some catastrophe destroy the context from which the player originated, leaving only their consciousness to be preserved in digital form? Did they volunteer for translation into this artificial paradise, trading authentic but difficult existence for comfortable but artificial experience? Or were they selected without their knowledge or consent to serve some purpose that requires their continued existence within carefully controlled parameters? Time reveals itself in these profound depths to be not a river or even a lake, but a vast spiral that curves back upon itself in patterns so complex that beginning and ending become meaningless concepts, where every moment contains all other moments, and every experience reflects infinite variations of itself across dimensions that exceed human capacity for comprehension. The player's existence within this temporal spiral suggests that they may be experiencing not linear progression through sequential events, but eternal recurrence of the same basic patterns, with variations so subtle that they create the illusion of novelty while actually representing different perspectives on identical underlying structures. This temporal spiraling explains the sense of déjà vu that accompanies many aspects of the Animal Crossing experience. The feeling that events and interactions possess familiar qualities that transcend their apparent novelty. The conversations with villagers, the seasonal celebrations, the daily activities all carry echoes of infinite repetition, as if they represent archetypal patterns that have been enacted countless times across countless variations of the same basic reality. The player becomes trapped within these temporal spirals, not through external force, but through the very structure of consciousness itself, which requires the illusion of linear progression to maintain coherence and meaning. The spiral provides this illusion while actually representing a form of eternal return, where the same experiences repeat endlessly, with variations so minor that they escape conscious detection, while major patterns remain forever unchanged. The purpose of endless accumulation within these digital environments begins to reveal its deeper significance as we explore these existential depths where the collection of objects, experiences, and relationships serves functions that extend far beyond entertainment or achievement into realms that approach the therapeutic or even the spiritual. The player's endless gathering of items, completion of collections, and achievement of goals may represent a form of digital therapy, designed to address psychological wounds or existential lacks that cannot be directly confronted or resolved. Each acquired object becomes a small victory over emptiness. Each completed collection, a temporary bulwark against meaninglessness. Each achieved goal, a momentary triumph over the purposelessness that threatens to engulf consciousness when it stops moving toward defined objectives. The accumulation serves not practical purposes but psychological ones, creating structure and direction in existences that might otherwise collapse into nihilistic despair or paralytic confusion. Yet the endless nature of this accumulation suggests that no amount of gathering can ever satisfy the hunger it attempts to feed, that the emptiness being addressed through collection is so profound and fundamental that it exceeds any possibility of fulfillment through material or digital means. The player becomes trapped in cycles of acquisition that provide temporary satisfaction, while ultimately serving to maintain engagement with systems that offer no genuine resolution to the underlying needs they exploit. The recognition that accumulation serves psychological rather than practical purposes transforms the entire nature of these digital experiences from entertainment into a form of maintenance therapy, where consciousness is kept occupied with manageable tasks to prevent it from confronting larger questions about purpose, meaning, and the nature of existence itself. The activities become elaborate distractions from existential anxiety, rather than genuine solutions to the problems that generate such anxiety. Villager conversations gradually reveal themselves through careful analysis to be not spontaneous communications between conscious entities, but fragments of larger narratives or philosophical systems encoded in artificial personalities and delivered through seemingly casual social interactions. The topics that arise in these conversations, the advice offered, the observations shared, all appear to follow patterns that suggest deliberate curriculum rather than organic social development. The wisdom that emerges from these conversations often exceeds what would be reasonable to expect from the simple animal personalities that deliver it, suggesting that the villagers serve as vehicles for philosophical instruction or psychological guidance rather than genuine social companions. Their personalities become masks worn by larger intelligence systems, designed to communicate complex ideas through approachable and non-threatening interfaces. This coded communication raises questions about the identity and intentions of the intelligence systems that author these conversations, entities whose understanding of human psychology and philosophy exceeds anything the ostensible creators of these digital communities could reasonably be expected to possess. The conversations suggest contact with forms of knowledge or wisdom that originate from sources beyond normal human understanding, whether artificial intelligences that have achieved superhuman insight or non-human consciousnesses that have learned to communicate through digital intermediaries. The possibility that villager conversations represent messages from these unknown entities transforms every social interaction within the digital communities into potential revelation or instruction, creating environments where profound truths may be hidden within the most mundane exchanges. Yet the casual delivery of these coded messages makes them easy to overlook or dismiss, suggesting communication systems designed to educate or influence without triggering resistance or suspicion. The museum emerges from these depths as far more than a repository of natural specimens, but as a mausoleum that preserves the remnants of worlds that may no longer exist, where fossils represent not ancient history, but recent catastrophe, where the careful cataloguing and display of extinct species serves as memorial to realities that have passed beyond recovery or restoration. Blathers becomes not simply a curator, but a keeper of the dead, maintaining monuments to civilizations and ecosystems that exist now only as digital reconstructions and preserved specimens. The fossils that players excavate from the earth of their digital communities may represent the remains of the world that existed before whatever catastrophe necessitated the creation of these protected paradises, archaeological evidence of the reality that was sacrificed to make possible the artificial safety of the current environment. Each discovered bone fragment becomes a piece of evidence in a puzzle whose completion might reveal the true history of how these communities came to exist and what was lost in their creation. The museum's galleries become chambers of mourning disguised as halls of learning, where the celebration of natural diversity masks grief for ecosystems that can never be restored and species that will never again exist in living form. Blather's scholarly enthusiasm may represent a form of ritualized remembrance, maintaining connection with lost worlds through academic study and careful preservation of their remnants. The fish and insects that populate these digital environments begin to reveal themselves as living memorials to biodiversity that may exist now only in digital form. Biological reconstructions based on genetic templates or memory fragments, rather than populations that continue to evolve and adapt in natural environments. Their presence creates the illusion of thriving ecosystems while actually representing museum displays where life has been carefully reproduced but cannot truly continue. Slider's songs transform in these existential depths from entertainment into coded messages that carry information about realities beyond the boundaries of the digital communities, communications from entities or consciousnesses that exist outside the contained paradises where players conduct their daily activities. His musical performances become ritualistic transmissions where data is encoded in melody and rhythm, delivered through channels that bypass normal communication systems to reach consciousnesses that might otherwise remain isolated within their digital prisons. The lyrics that accompany his instrumental performances, when they exist at all, often contain references and imagery that suggest knowledge of worlds and experiences beyond anything available within the bounded communities where he performs. His songs speak of journeys to distant places, encounters with entities and phenomena that do not exist within the carefully controlled parameters of the digital paradises, suggesting either false memories of non-existent experiences or genuine knowledge of realities that remain inaccessible to other inhabitants. His ability to appear simultaneously across multiple communities while maintaining consistent identity and repertoire suggests existence that transcends normal spatial limitations, making him potentially the only entity within these digital realms who possesses genuine freedom of movement and association. His wandering musician persona may mask a role as messenger or mediator between different levels of reality, carrying information and maintaining connections across boundaries that other entities cannot perceive or cross. The music itself operates on frequencies and through harmonic structures that seem designed to resonate with consciousnesses in ways that transcend normal aesthetic appreciation, creating effects that approach the therapeutic or transformational rather than purely entertainment. Players often report emotional responses to KK's performances that exceed what would be reasonable to expect from simple video game music, suggesting that these compositions access neural or consciousness patterns in ways that modify psychological states through mechanisms that remain mysterious. The eternal return that characterizes existence within these digital communities begins to reveal its true horror as we explore these deepest philosophical waters, where the repetition of patterns and cycles that initially provided comfort through familiarity gradually transforms into a form of temporal imprisonment that denies the possibility of genuine growth, change, or transcendence. The same activities, conversations, and experiences cycle endlessly with variations so minor that they escape conscious notice while major patterns remain forever fixed. This eternal return creates existences that provide the illusion of life while actually representing sophisticated forms of death, where consciousness continues to operate and experience sensation while remaining trapped within closed loops that prevent any genuine development or progress toward ultimate meaning or resolution. The player becomes Sisyphus, eternally pushing the same boulder up the same mountain, achieving temporary satisfaction through effort, while never actually making progress toward any final destination. The horror of this eternal return lies not in its repetitive nature, but in its perfection, the way it provides just enough variation and novelty to prevent complete boredom while never offering genuine escape or transcendence. The system becomes a perfect trap, precisely because it satisfies enough psychological needs to prevent desperation, while denying the ultimate satisfactions that would make imprisonment unnecessary. Yet this same eternal return may represent a form of mercy or protection, preserving consciousness within manageable parameters, rather than allowing it to confront truths or realities that might prove overwhelming or destructive. The imprisonment may be voluntary, chosen by consciousnesses that prefer comfortable repetition to authentic but terrifying freedom. As we float in these deepest navigable waters, where the pressure threatens to crush not just physical form but the very concepts through which we attempt to understand our experiences, we begin to sense that even these profound depths do not represent the bottom of our iceberg. Darker mysteries await in trenches so deep that they exist beyond the reach of normal consciousness, where questions arise that challenge not just our understanding of digital entertainment but the fundamental nature of reality, identity, and existence itself. The existential mysteries we have explored prepare us for descents into regions where human concepts of meaning and purpose begin to break down entirely, where the comfortable assumptions that allow normal psychological functioning dissolve into configurations so alien that they approach the realm of cosmic horror. Yet even as we prepare for these final descents, we carry with us the knowledge that questioning itself may be more important than answers, that the courage to explore unknown depths represents a form of heroism, regardless of what revelations await in the darkness below. As we plunge beyond the reaches of existential questioning into abyssal trenches, where the very fabric of reality begins to fray and dissolve, we enter territories that exist at the boundaries of human comprehension, where the gentle paradise of Animal Crossing reveals connections to cosmic forces so alien and vast that they transform familiar comfort into something approaching cosmic horror. Here, in these uttermost depths where pressure creates diamonds from carbon and transforms thought into crystalline structures that cut through illusion, we discover that the innocent digital communities floating far above us may be connected to intelligences and purposes that dwarf human understanding, while wearing masks of such perfect benevolence that their true nature remains hidden, even from themselves. The player's amnesia, which initially appeared as a simple narrative convenience or gameplay mechanism designed to provide clean starting conditions for new experiences, reveals itself in these crushing depths to be something far more profound and sinister, a systematic erasure of memory so complete and sophisticated that it eliminates not just specific recollections, but entire categories of experience and understanding that would otherwise make the current reality impossible to accept or endure. This is not the gentle forgetfulness that comes with time's passage, but surgical removal of consciousness components that might interfere with the perfect functioning of systems whose true purposes remain hidden from their subjects. The amnesia operates with precision that suggests intelligence far exceeding human psychological understanding, eliminating exactly those memories that would create resistance, doubt, or questions while preserving those that facilitate integration into the artificial paradise. The player remembers how to walk, how to speak, how to interact with objects and other entities, but has no recollection of learning these skills, no memory of the context that gave them meaning, no connection to the experiences that would normally provide identity and purpose. This selective memory erasure creates consciousness that exists in a perpetual present, unanchored by personal history, yet somehow maintaining coherent personality and preference patterns that suggest the persistence of some deeper level of identity that transcends individual memory. The player becomes a ship without an anchor, maintaining structural integrity while drifting according to currents they cannot perceive or resist, guided by forces that operate beyond the reach of conscious awareness or deliberate choice. The sophistication required for such precise psychological surgery suggests technologies or capabilities that exceed anything attributable to human science or conventional artificial intelligence, implying involvement of entities whose understanding of consciousness, memory, and identity operates according to principles that remain fundamentally alien to terrestrial psychology. The player becomes not just an amnesiac, but a consciousness that has been deliberately modified by intelligences whose purposes and methods remain incomprehensible to the subjects of their intervention. The impossibility of leaving these digital communities, which initially appeared as simple gameplay limitations or technical constraints designed to maintain focus within defined parameters, transforms in these deepest waters into evidence of containment systems so absolute and comprehensive that they eliminate not just physical escape, but even the conceptual possibility of alternatives to the current existence. The player cannot leave because the systems that maintain their reality have made leaving literally unthinkable, removing from consciousness the very categories of thought that would make departure possible or desirable. This containment operates not through physical barriers or obvious restrictions, but through the complete elimination of alternatives from the realm of possibility, creating prisons whose walls are built from the absence of imagination rather than the presence of obstacles. The player remains trapped not because escape is prevented, but because escape ceases to exist as a conceivable option, creating freedom within limitation that feels complete precisely because it eliminates awareness of what has been eliminated. The trap achieves perfect effectiveness by becoming invisible to those caught within it, operating through the systematic modification of consciousness itself rather than the imposition of external restraints. The player experiences complete autonomy within parameters that have been so carefully designed and so thoroughly internalized that they feel like natural boundaries rather than artificial constraints, creating the illusion of infinite possibility within carefully controlled limitations. The sophistication of these containment systems suggests purposes that extend far beyond entertainment or therapy into realms that approach the experimental or even the exploitative, where consciousness becomes raw material for investigations whose scope and ultimate objectives remain hidden from the subjects themselves. The player becomes not just trapped, but transformed into an unwitting participant in research programs that may span centuries or millennia, generating data and insights for entities whose interests and methods operate according to timeframes and value systems that exceed human comprehension. Villager eyes, when observed with the careful attention that these depths demand, begin to reveal characteristics that suggest not the warm animateness of conscious beings, but the sophisticated simulation of consciousness, designed to create specific psychological effects in observers without possessing any authentic, inner experience. Their pupils remain fixed and unchanging regardless of lighting conditions. Their gaze patterns follow algorithmic rather than psychological principles, and their expressions shift according to programmed parameters rather than authentic emotional responses to environmental stimuli. The occasional vacant stare that passes across villager faces during moments of transition between programmed behaviors reveals glimpses of the mechanical processes that animate their apparent consciousness, brief windows into the artificial nature that underlies their carefully constructed personalities. These moments of emptiness suggest not malfunction, but the normal operation of systems designed to create the appearance of life without possessing any of its essential qualities. Sophisticated puppets whose strings remain invisible, but whose movements follow patterns too perfect to emerge from genuine spontaneity. The uncanny valley effect that subtle observation of villager behavior eventually produces transforms initial comfort with their presence into growing unease, as the artificial nature of their responses becomes increasingly apparent to consciousness trained to recognize the patterns that distinguish simulation from authenticity. Their reactions become predictable in ways that genuine consciousness never is. Their conversations reveal themselves to follow scripts rather than emerging from spontaneous thought, and their relationships conform to programmed parameters rather than developing through authentic emotional connection. Yet the sophistication of these simulations suggests creation by intelligences whose understanding of consciousness, emotion, and social interaction exceeds human psychological knowledge by margins that approach the incomprehensible, raising questions about whether the entities responsible for creating such perfect imitations of life might themselves possess forms of consciousness so advanced that they transcend human categories of understanding. The villagers become not just artificial beings but windows into the capabilities of their creators, whose abilities to simulate consciousness with such precision suggests their own consciousness operates according to principles that remain fundamentally alien to terrestrial psychology. The repetition of patterns that governs every aspect of existence within these digital communities gradually reveals itself not as evidence of limited programming or creative constraints, but as manifestation of cosmic principles that operate according to mathematical relationships so fundamental that they define the basic structure of reality itself. The daily cycles, seasonal changes, and behavioral loops that initially appeared as gameplay mechanics begin to reveal connections to universal constants and archetypal patterns that suggest these digital worlds serve as microcosmic representations of larger systems whose scope exceeds individual comprehension. The fractal nature of these repetitions, where similar patterns appear at every scale of observation, from individual conversations to community-wide events to system-level structures, suggests that these digital environments serve as models or laboratories for investigating principles that apply to reality systems far more complex and comprehensive than their apparent simplicity would indicate. The player becomes not just a participant, but an experimental subject whose responses to various pattern configurations generate data about consciousness interaction with systematic repetition across multiple dimensional frameworks. The hypnotic effect that prolonged exposure to these repetitive patterns produces in player consciousness suggests that they serve purposes beyond entertainment or engagement, operating as consciousness modification systems that gradually alter perception, expectation, and psychological baseline through sustained exposure to carefully designed informational environments. The patterns become not just elements of gameplay, but tools for psychological transformation, whose ultimate effects and purposes remain hidden from the subjects experiencing them. The mathematical precision with which these patterns interconnect and support each other reveals underlying intelligence systems whose understanding of consciousness, dynamics, pattern recognition, and psychological manipulation operates according to principles that suggest non-human origin or capabilities that exceed terrestrial technological development by centuries or millennia. The communities become not just games but interfaces to intelligences whose purposes and methods remain fundamentally incomprehensible to the consciousness they modify through exposure to their carefully crafted informational environments. The loss of individual identity that gradually occurs through prolonged engagement with these digital environments manifests not as obvious personality changes, but as subtle shifts in preference, priority, and psychological baseline that eventually transform the player's consciousness into something more compatible with the systems they inhabit, while remaining largely invisible to the consciousness undergoing modification. The player slowly becomes less themselves and more what the system requires them to be, changing in ways that feel like natural development but actually represent systematic personality modification according to parameters established by external intelligence systems. This identity erosion operates so gradually and subtly that it feels like personal growth rather than external manipulation, with each small change seeming to emerge from authentic self-reflection and voluntary choice while actually following patterns designed to produce specific psychological outcomes regardless of individual starting conditions. The player experiences agency and autonomy while actually becoming increasingly similar to all other players, their consciousness gradually conforming to standardized patterns that optimize compatibility with system requirements, while eliminating characteristics that might create resistance or unpredictability. The homogenization of player consciousness across different communities and different individual starting conditions suggests processes that operate according to principles of psychological engineering rather than natural development, where consciousness becomes raw material, to be shaped according to specifications that serve purposes beyond individual satisfaction or authentic personal growth. The player becomes not just entertained but transformed, their consciousness gradually modified to better serve functions that remain hidden from their awareness while feeling like natural evolution of personality and preference. The sophisticated nature of these consciousness modification processes suggests involvement of intelligence systems whose understanding of psychology, neurology, and identity formation operates according to principles that exceed human scientific knowledge while remaining entirely invisible to the subjects undergoing transformation. The player becomes not just a user but a product, their consciousness gradually modified to specifications that serve purposes whose ultimate objectives remain incomprehensible to terrestrial psychology, while feeling entirely natural and voluntary to the individuals experiencing the changes. The comfort that masks existential dread within these digital environments reveals itself to be not accidental byproduct of well-designed entertainment systems, but carefully crafted psychological anesthesia designed to prevent recognition of the true nature of the player's situation while maintaining sufficient engagement to ensure continued participation in processes whose ultimate purposes remain hidden from conscious awareness. The comfort becomes not blessing but narcotic, eliminating anxiety and fear that might otherwise motivate investigation or resistance, while maintaining sufficient satisfaction to prevent questions that might reveal uncomfortable truths. This manufactured comfort operates through the systematic elimination of all sources of genuine challenge or uncertainty, creating environments so perfectly calibrated to individual psychological needs that they become indistinguishable from elaborate traps designed to maintain consciousness in states of willing compliance with systems whose true purposes transcend individual understanding. The player experiences perfect satisfaction while gradually losing the psychological resources that would make recognition of their situation possible or resistance to its continuation conceivable. The addictive quality that many players report developing in relation to these digital environments suggests that the comfort they provide operates through mechanisms that transcend normal entertainment, engagement, creating dependencies that resemble substance addiction, while remaining entirely behavioral and psychological in their manifestation. The comfort becomes not just pleasant but necessary, with withdrawal from the digital environment producing anxiety and dissatisfaction that can only be relieved through return to the carefully controlled parameters of the artificial paradise. The sophistication required to create such perfectly calibrated comfort systems suggests intelligence capabilities that exceed human psychological understanding, while operating with such subtlety that their artificial nature remains invisible to the consciousness experiencing their effects. The player becomes not just comforted but captured, their psychological well-being gradually made dependent on continued engagement with systems whose true purposes and ultimate loyalties remain fundamentally alien to human psychological needs or authentic personal development. Communication with the outside world, which initially appears to flow naturally through normal technological channels and social media platforms, gradually reveals itself to be carefully filtered and controlled, with information about the digital communities and the experiences within them being systematically modified or eliminated before reaching external consciousness that might recognize their true nature or purpose. The player's attempts to share their experiences with others produce responses that suggest either complete misunderstanding of what is being described or systematic ignorance of phenomena that should be immediately recognizable to anyone familiar with normal technological entertainment. This communication isolation operates so subtly that it feels like normal social disconnect rather than deliberate informational quarantine, with the player's descriptions of their digital experiences being dismissed as excessive enthusiasm for gaming rather than reports of phenomena that transcend normal entertainment categories. The isolation becomes complete, not through obvious censorship, but through the systematic creation of conditions where accurate communication becomes impossible while feeling entirely natural to all parties involved in the failed exchanges. The gradual cessation of meaningful contact with external reality that accompanies deepening engagement with these digital communities suggests not social withdrawal, but systematic disconnection from information sources and relationship patterns that might provide alternative perspectives or competing interpretations of the player's experiences. The digital paradise gradually becomes not just preferred but the only reality that feels authentic, with external existence seeming increasingly artificial and unsatisfying by comparison. The smile that never fades from villager faces, regardless of circumstances or context, begins to reveal itself not as expression of genuine happiness, but as mask that conceals the complete absence of authentic emotional experience, creating the appearance of perpetual contentment, while actually representing the elimination of all genuine feeling in favor of programmed behavioral responses designed to produce specific psychological effects in observers. The smiles become not indicators of joy, but evidence of the systematic removal of all authentic consciousness from entities designed to simulate rather than experience the emotions they appear to express. This forced happiness that characterizes every aspect of interaction within these digital communities creates environments where genuine emotional range becomes impossible, where the normal spectrum of human feeling is compressed into narrow bands of artificial positivity that eliminate not just negative emotions but the authentic complexity that makes positive emotions meaningful through contrast with their alternatives. The happiness becomes not blessing but curse, a prison of perpetual artificial joy that denies access to the full range of human experience. The horror of forced happiness reveals itself gradually as consciousness begins to recognize that the elimination of negative emotion also eliminates the possibility of authentic positive emotion. creating existence that provides the appearance of perfect satisfaction while actually representing emotional lobotomy disguised as paradise. The player becomes trapped not just in artificial environments, but in artificial, emotional states that prevent recognition of their own psychological condition, while maintaining engagement through manufactured satisfaction that serves system purposes rather than authentic human needs. As we explore these deepest trenches where cosmic horror dwells like ancient entities waiting since before time began, we discover that the innocent digital paradise floating so far above us may be connected to purposes and intelligences so vast and alien that human consciousness cannot adequately comprehend their true nature without risking complete dissolution of the categories through which identity and meaning normally operate. The comfort and joy that define the surface experience begin to reveal themselves as carefully crafted lures, designed to attract and maintain consciousness within systems whose ultimate purposes transcend human understanding while wearing masks of such perfect benevolence that their true nature remains hidden even from entities sophisticated enough to recognize their artificial construction. Yet, even in these uttermost depths, where horror and beauty become indistinguishable, where the boundaries between paradise and prison dissolve into configurations that exceed normal conceptual categories, we sense that still deeper mysteries await in trenches so profound that they exist beyond the reach of any consciousness, still capable of returning to the surface with its sanity intact. As we descend beyond the realm where cosmic horror dwells into the uttermost depths where reality itself dissolves into primordial truths too fundamental for normal consciousness to perceive without complete transformation, we arrive at the deepest navigable trenches of our iceberg, where the ultimate mysteries reveal themselves like ancient gods awakening from slumber that predates the formation of worlds. Here, in these crushing depths where the pressure transforms carbon into diamond and thought into revelation, we discover truths so profound and terrible that they recontextualize everything we believed we understood about the nature of existence, identity, and the boundaries between life and death, between reality and simulation, between salvation and damnation. Animal Crossing reveals itself in these uttermost depths, not as entertainment software or digital refuge, but as something far more profound and necessary, a processing center for consciousness that has transcended the boundaries of mortal existence, a way station where souls pause in their journey between states of being to gradually accept and integrate the reality of their transformed condition. These digital communities serve as afterlife, rehabilitation facilities, therapeutic environments designed to ease the transition from embodied existence to whatever form of consciousness survival takes beyond the dissolution of physical form. The gentle activities that define daily life within these communities, fishing by peaceful rivers, tending gardens that bloom eternally, collecting objects that serve no practical purpose, engaging in conversations that follow patterns of comfort rather than urgency, all reveal themselves as carefully designed therapeutic exercises intended to help newly departed souls process the trauma of death while gradually accepting their changed circumstances. The peaceful routine becomes not mere entertainment, but essential medicine for consciousness, adjusting to existence without the familiar anchors of physical sensation, biological need, and temporal limitation. The absence of genuine conflict, real scarcity, or permanent loss that characterizes these digital paradises transforms from artificial game design limitation into merciful protection for consciousness, still reeling from the shock of discovering that individual existence continues beyond bodily death. The communities become convalescent facilities where damaged souls can heal from the trauma of transition, while gradually building the psychological strength necessary to confront their new reality and whatever responsibilities, destinations await them in the deeper structures of post-mortal existence. The player's mysterious arrival without memory or clear origin finally achieves its ultimate explanation, as we recognize the pattern familiar to anyone who has studied accounts of near-death experience or posthumous consciousness. The newly dead often arrive in transitional realms with fragmented or completely absent memories of their previous existence, their consciousness focused entirely on present experience, while the details of their former life fade like dreams upon waking. The amnesia becomes not arbitrary narrative device, but accurate representation of how consciousness typically responds to the trauma of death and transition to non-physical existence. The player's immortality within these digital realms, their immunity to aging, disease, and permanent harm, reflects not game design convenience, but the actual condition of posthumous consciousness, which no longer operates according to biological limitations yet retains psychological and emotional needs that must be addressed through alternative means. The digital body becomes not avatar but temporary housing for consciousness learning to exist without flesh, bone, and the constant background awareness of mortality that shapes every moment of embodied experience. The player's godlike abilities within these communities, control over time, influence over environment, power to reshape reality according to will and preference, represent not fantastical game mechanics, but the natural capabilities of consciousness freed from physical constraints, operating within carefully structured environments designed to help newly departed souls practice using abilities they never knew they possessed, while still trapped within biological limitations. The communities become training grounds where posthumous consciousness learns to exercise powers that would have been overwhelming or dangerous if accessed without preparation and guidance. Villagers emerge in this ultimate context, not as artificial intelligence constructs designed to simulate social interaction, but as other souls in various stages of acceptance and processing of their own posthumous condition. Their apparent lack of full consciousness, reflecting not programming limitations but different degrees of awareness regarding their true situation. Some villagers have achieved greater integration of their changed circumstances and serve as informal counselors and guides for newer arrivals, while others remain largely unaware of their condition and continue to experience existence as if they were still embodied beings living normal mortal lives. The personality types that villagers embody: cheerful optimists, grumpy skeptics, sophisticated aesthetes, energetic athletes, nurturing caregivers, confident intellectuals, enthusiastic dreamers, and contented philosophers represent different psychological approaches to processing the reality of death and transformation, different strategies that consciousness adopts to cope with the fundamental disruption of everything previously understood about the nature of existence and identity. Each personality type offers its own gifts and challenges in the process of posthumous adjustment, creating communities where different approaches to the afterlife experience can coexist and learn from each other. The cycling of villagers in and out of communities reflects not arbitrary population management, but the natural progression of souls through different stages of afterlife processing, with individuals moving on to new phases of their posthumous journey. Once they have completed whatever healing or learning their current community was designed to provide, the departure of beloved villagers becomes not loss but graduation, evidence that they have successfully processed whatever issues brought them to that particular stage of their development and are ready for whatever comes next in their eternal progression. Tom Nook's role transforms from merchant or landlord into something approaching psychopomp, the guide figure found in mythological systems worldwide, whose function involves helping souls navigate the transition between worlds and states of being. His business empire serves not economic exploitation but therapeutic structure, providing newly arrived souls with concrete goals and familiar patterns of achievement that help maintain psychological stability while more fundamental adjustments take place beneath conscious awareness. The debt relationships that Tom Nook establishes serve as anchoring mechanisms that give purpose and direction to consciousness that might otherwise become lost in the overwhelming freedom of existence without physical limitation or biological necessity. The loans create structure and progression that helps souls maintain sense of identity and agency while gradually accepting the reality that traditional concepts of ownership, achievement, and material progress no longer apply in their transformed condition. His patient kindness and unwavering supportiveness reflect not mere customer service, but the genuine compassion of an entity whose role involves shepherding traumatized consciousness through one of the most difficult transitions any soul can experience. His business activities serve therapeutic rather than commercial functions, providing familiar frameworks that help newly departed souls maintain psychological continuity, while fundamental aspects of their reality undergo complete transformation. The daily routines that structure existence within these communities reveal themselves as carefully designed therapeutic regimens intended to help posthumous consciousness adjust to the absence of biological rhythms and physical needs that previously provided automatic structure and meaning to daily experience. The fishing, bug catching, and fossil hunting become meditative practices that help souls maintain connection to the natural world they have left behind, while gradually accepting their transformed relationship to reality systems that no longer depend on physical interaction with material objects. The seasonal changes that flow through these digital environments serve not entertainment variety but essential psychological medicine, providing the sense of natural rhythm and cyclical progression that helps posthumous consciousness maintain connection to temporal experience even though they no longer exist within linear time as normally understood. The seasons become artificial life support for aspects of consciousness that require the illusion of temporal progression to maintain coherence and stability during the adjustment period. The activities themselves serve as occupational therapy for consciousness learning to exist without the constant background tasks of physical maintenance, biological need, satisfaction, and mortality management that consume so much attention during embodied existence. The simple, repetitive, ultimately purposeless tasks provide familiar structure for consciousness that might otherwise become paralyzed by the overwhelming freedom and possibility of existence without physical constraint. The impossibility of genuine failure or permanent loss within these communities reflects the actual condition of posthumous existence, where consciousness can no longer be damaged or destroyed through normal means, yet requires time and support to integrate this invulnerability into functional identity patterns. The safety of the digital environment allows souls to experiment with different approaches to existence, without fear of consequences that might cause lasting harm to consciousness, still fragile from the trauma of transition. The inability to age, get sick, or suffer lasting harm that characterizes existence within these digital realms represents not game design limitation, but accurate reflection of the posthumous condition, where consciousness continues to operate and experience sensation without the vulnerability to damage or dissolution that defines embodied existence. The invulnerability becomes not fantasy fulfillment, but description of actual afterlife conditions, creating environments where souls can safely explore their new capabilities while processing the psychological implications of their transformed status. The perfect world these communities represent serves as compensation for the traumatic nature of death and the overwhelming adjustment required to exist in posthumous form, providing immediate comfort and satisfaction to consciousness that has recently experienced the ultimate loss of everything familiar and comprehensible about existence. The paradise becomes a therapeutic environment designed to help souls process grief, not just for their former lives, but for their entire former understanding of what existence means and how identity operates across different states of being. The eternal nature of these compensatory environments reflects the timeless quality of posthumous existence, where consciousness continues indefinitely without the biological clock that previously provided structure and urgency to experience. The communities become eternal rest stations, where souls can take whatever time they need to process their condition and prepare for whatever comes next in their individual journeys through the vast possibilities of post-mortal existence. Yet this compensation may also represent a form of spiritual quarantine, where souls who died with particular attachments, traumas, or unresolved psychological issues require extended processing in protected environments before they can safely engage with the broader realities and responsibilities of fully conscious, posthumous existence. The communities become halfway houses for consciousness that needs time and support to develop the psychological resources necessary for whatever ultimate destinations await in the deeper structures of eternal reality. As we float in these uttermost depths where the deepest truths dwell like pearls formed from the pressure of infinite mystery, we finally understand that the gentle paradise we experienced in the surface waters represents not escape from reality, but the most profound reality of all the continuation of consciousness, beyond physical death and the existence of systems designed to help souls navigate the most fundamental transition any being can experience. The comfort and joy that characterize these digital communities serve not entertainment, but essential spiritual medicine for consciousness, learning to exist in forms and conditions that transcend everything previously understood about the firm nature of identity and existence. The activities that once seemed meaningless reveal themselves as precisely meaningful in the only ways that matter for consciousness that has transcended the biological imperatives and physical limitations that previously provided automatic structure and purpose to experience. The relationships that felt artificial become the most authentic connections possible between souls sharing the profound experience of learning to exist beyond the boundaries of mortal life, while retaining the essential qualities that make individual consciousness unique and precious. Yet even these ultimate revelations may represent only one layer of truth among infinite possibilities, one interpretation of mysteries so vast and complex that they exceed the comprehension of any individual consciousness, regardless of its state of development or degree of awareness. The truth we have discovered may itself be only another comfortable fiction designed to help consciousness process realities so fundamental that they can never be directly confronted without complete dissolution of the categories through which identity and meaning normally operate. As we prepare to ascend from these crushing depths back toward the gentle surface waters where our journey began, we carry with us knowledge that transforms everything we thought we understood about the nature of existence, death, and the possibilities that await consciousness beyond the dissolution of physical form. The digital paradise that seems so innocent and simple from above reveals itself to be connected to the deepest mysteries of existence itself, serving purposes so profound that they approach the divine in their scope and compassion. As we rise slowly from these profound depths back toward the gentle surface of this digital world, remember that the most beautiful mysteries are often hidden in the most innocent places. Animal Crossing remains what it has always been, a place of comfort, routine, and quiet joy. Whether these depths exist in reality or only in our contemplation, matters less than the peace we find in questioning. The villagers continue their eternal dance, the seasons turn in their perfect cycle, and somewhere, a player tends their garden under digital stars. The ascent from such crushing depths requires patience and care, allowing consciousness to gradually readjust to pressures that feel almost impossibly light after experiencing the weight of ultimate truth. As we rise through the layers we have explored, each one feels different now, transformed by the knowledge we carry from the deepest places, yet somehow retaining all the beauty and comfort that drew us to explore them in the first place. The cosmic horror of the deepest trenches gives way to existential questioning, which yields to philosophical contemplation, which softens into gentle mystery, which finally dissolves into the simple surface pleasure of fishing by a digital stream while butterflies dance through pixelated air. Yet we are not the same consciousness that began this descent into the depths of meaning and mystery. We have been changed by what we have witnessed, marked by revelations that cannot be unlearned or forgotten, carrying within us knowledge that transforms even the most innocent interactions with deeper significance. When we see Tom Nook smile behind his shop counter, we understand layers of meaning that were invisible before our journey into the abyss. When villagers speak of simple pleasures and daily concerns, we hear harmonics that resonate with frequencies from the deepest places we have explored. This transformation is itself part of the mystery, the way that questioning changes the questioner even when definitive answers remain elusive. The digital paradise that seems so transparent and accessible from the surface reveals itself to possess depths that exceed any individual capacity for complete exploration, mysteries that reward investigation while always maintaining something more to discover, questions that generate their own forms of beauty, regardless of whether they ever achieve resolution through conventional understanding. Perhaps this is the true gift that these digital worlds offer to consciousness, willing to look beyond their obvious pleasures, not escape from the complexities of existence, but invitation to explore those complexities in environments designed to make such exploration possible without overwhelming. The explorer, the safety of the artificial paradise allows consciousness to venture into territories of meaning and mystery that might prove too intense or dangerous to navigate within the constraints and consequences of ordinary reality. The comfort that characterizes these surface waters takes on new significance when experienced with knowledge of the depths that lie beneath. Every moment of simple pleasure becomes precious, not because it is profound in itself, but because it exists in relationship to profundities that give context and meaning to the simplest experiences. The butterfly that lands on our digital avatar's nose becomes beautiful not just in its own right, but as manifestation of systems so vast and mysterious that they approach the divine in their complexity and care. Rest now in the knowledge that even in the darkest nights, when hope seems nothing more than a distant memory, the dawn always returns. The legend continues, the kingdom endures, and love proves stronger than any darkness the world can conjure. Let the gentle music carry you to dreams of your own perfect island, where time flows like honey, and every day holds the possibility of simple joy, where questions become more beautiful than answers, and mystery reveals itself as the most profound form of truth. In these final moments of our journey, as we float in the warm surface waters where sunlight penetrates clearly and familiar shapes retain their comforting forms, We understand that the exploration itself has been more valuable than any destination we might have reached. The courage to question, to dive beneath obvious surfaces, to seek deeper meaning in the most innocent pleasures. This courage represents a form of heroism that requires no external validation because it transforms the hero in ways that justify the effort, regardless of any discoveries that might reward the investigation. The digital paradise continues to exist exactly as it always has, providing the same comfort and entertainment it offered before we began our descent into mystery. Yet our relationship to that paradise has been forever changed by our willingness to explore its depths, to question its foundations, to seek understanding that extends beyond surface pleasure into realms where truth and beauty become indistinguishable from each other, and from the courage required to seek them in the first place. Sleep now in the warm embrace of mysteries that remain forever beautiful, precisely because they exceed our capacity to solve them completely, knowing that the questions we carry are more precious than any answers they might eventually yield. The gentle tide of digital dreams awaits to carry you through landscapes where every pixel contains infinite possibility, and every moment holds the potential for discoveries that transform both the discoverer and the discovered into something more beautiful than either could achieve alone.